All right, would you even think of giving money to these guys? What if I told you, no, you already are. U.S. protests ramping up in Egypt, and we're still shelling out dough to Egypt, and in a report that media outlets there are slamming our policies. And my next guest really has been wondering, you know, haven't we heard enough? Haven't we paid enough? Haven't we looked like saps enough? Terror analyst Michael Scheuer says it's time to end this foreign aid to Egypt and others that treat us this way right now. Michael, good to have you. You know, the old saw rap you get from others is that, well, these folks, the ones who burn the flag, they're not the ones getting the money. The ones who are getting the money are those that try to keep the government stable, try to keep it friendly to the U.S. You say what?
I say a pox on all of them, Neil. You know, we have managed to turn a democratic election, a fair election, into a disaster for the United States. We've helped put the military back into power in Egypt to reestablish a dictatorship. And we've aggravated an enemy that could be very powerful and certainly have opened the way to a civil war in Egypt. It's time to cut. You know, Gore Vidal wrote 20 years ago that the Middle East is important to us just to the degree the War of the Roses is important to us. It's not. It's time to cut the aid to the Egyptians, to the Turks, to the Jordanians, to the Israelis. End it all. Let them sit in their own juice.
You said it to the Israelis as well, aren't it? Because a lot of people look at this and say, well, if we don't play a role, the Chinese, the Russians, name your superpower du jour, will, and it will be to our detriment. You think things are bad now, they control the shots and the funding, game over. What do you say?
What could be better than to wish the Israelis and the Arabs on the Chinese or the Russians? We've had them for 50 years. It's cost us too much money, too many lives. Let the Russians try to deal with the mess, or the Chinese.
All right, now, but turn it around. Whatever money we have given Egypt, the argument in the past has been it brought us a relatively stable democracy until it fell apart. You argue if that's the price of getting friends and keeping them, a waste of money.
What do we have what do we have left in the Middle East, Neil? We bet on tyranny. The world's preeminent democracy bet for 50 years on the stability and eternity of monarchies and dictatorships and tyrannies. It's gone. Our influence is zero. You can't send, for example, to Egypt 2 senators who may as well be in the Israeli Knesset. They are the biggest supporters of Israel you can imagine.
John McCain heading out there and others, right?
And do we think Muslims are stupid? Do we really think that Graham and McCain were out there to give a share of power to the Islamists? They were out there to go through a pantomime so the military in Egypt could say, well, even the Americans tried to help us and the Europeans tried to help us, but those darn Islamists who did win a fair election, they just walked out on us. So things could not be worse unless we make them worse, sir. And aiding these people makes them worse.
You mentioned Russia a few seconds ago, and I want to get to the president's comments on Russia, where he made it very, very clear that despite not going for this one-on-one summit with Vladimir Putin, he does want to still go to the G20. In other words, it might be a cold kind of a tension between the two leaders, but there's still enough and a lot we can do together. Do you believe that? Do you think that Russia is continuing to have the upper hand here and make us look like fools, or the president's right to respond the way he did?
I think the president looks like a cowering coward, to turn a phrase, sir. Putin's a tough guy, whether you agree with him or not. The president needed to go and meet with him and at least figuratively grab him by lapels and explain what America's position is.
But why? What if they really hate each other? To what end? What is that going to prove?
Well, I think what it proves is that Obama, for once, would be interested in protecting the United States. I think, for my mind, that would be an important step forward. And I also think that part of this lesson is Obama has been more than willing, with his party and with the Republicans, to poke their fingers in the eyes of the Russians over inconsequential things. Organized crime in the Soviet Union, gay rights in the Soviet Union. Whatever you think of what the Russians are doing, it's the Russians' business. It's not ours. Part of the problem with the Snowden thing is Putin finally got a chance to put a finger right back in our eye for all the gratuitous times we have done it to him.
So do you think anything comes of this? In other words, that He is obviously going to respond on a certain level in one way, shape, or form. What do you think it'll be?
Well, I think he's done it already. Snowden is a real problem for the United States, and I think he's caused us a lingering problem. We don't know what Snowden has, how much more of it he will release. I think this is an issue that should have been done much more quietly than we tried to do it, sir.
So you think it gets worse?
I do think it gets worse over time.
Wow. All right, Michael Scheuer, good seeing you again. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir.